Revealed. The incredible wedding night that transformed Catherine de Medici into a surprising agricultural innovator. Amelia Johnson stood in the middle of her father's field, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the wilting crops. Each withered stalk seemed to echo the heavy grief weighing on her chest, memories of her father flooding her mind. The plaid shirt, once crisp and vibrant, now hung loosely on her frame. It was a symbol of her fading dreams of becoming a botanist, of discovering new plants that could nourish the world. Instead, she was buried under the weight of her family's mounting debts, unspoken expectations, and the gnawing guilt that lingered in the air. Her father had always urged her to reach for more, yet now she felt tethered to the dirt that held her family's legacy. The last words he had spoken echoed in her ears, "Don't give up on your dreams, Amelia." They cut through her like a knife, sharp and almost cruel. How could she pursue those dreams when the whole family needed her? She thought about the charity gala she'd attended last week, the talk of financial aids and grants, about saving collapsing farms. The excitement in the air had felt like a betrayal to her heart, which still yearned for education and innovation. Suddenly, she recalled whispers of a crumbling estate in France, once owned by the de Medici family, rumored to house agricultural secrets that could change farming forever. A flicker of hope ignited within her, but like a candle in a storm, it felt vulnerable. What if those secrets were the answer to all her problems? But doubt swirled like a tempest. Could a small-town girl like her truly dent the elitist armor of the scientific community? Before she could spiral further into despair, Amelia forced her mind to focus. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. She took a deep breath, feeling her resolve harden. If she could just get to France and prove her worth, perhaps she could revive not only her dreams but also save the family farm from its impending doom. That night, under a sky full of stars, she made the decision she would go to France. Upon landing in Paris, the intoxicating fragrance of blooming flowers wrapped around her, lifting her spirits for a fleeting moment. Yet, as she ventured into the world of esteemed botanists, their dismissive gazes told her everything she feared. They scrutinized her small-town upbringing, whispered doubts that sliced through her confidence like a razor. Muscle tension coiled tighter as she felt unworthy. But amidst this elitism, she clung to one thought. Her family legacy depended on her now. One evening, rummaging through an old bookstore, she stumbled upon her mother's journal. Pages filled with dreams of horticulture and the ancient de Medici traditions. Her mother had been tied to greatness, and it fueled Amelia's determination. Conversations with her mother's old mentor, nestled in quaint cafes, became a refuge amid the elitist facade dominating the academic landscape. But as she prepared for her presentation, a chilling reality gripped her. She was still that small-town girl navigating a world fraught with criticism. The conference room buzzed with voices as she took the podium, heart pounding the name of her fears, yet unsure whether to rise above or slip back into the shadows. Just then, an envelope slipped from her mother's journal, a letter outlining revolutionary work left unsaid decades ago. The audience held its breath. Would revealing this hidden knowledge validate her findings or shatter what little confidence she had left? A familiar figure from her past loomed at the doorway, eyes piercing through the crowd. The air thickened with tension, and her dreams hung delicately in the balance. Would she embrace this chance to reclaim her family's legacy, or would fears of her upbringing silence her voice forever? Amelia's hand trembled slightly as she clutched the envelope, its crisp parchment a tangible reminder of both her lineage and her responsibilities. It held the whispers of her mother's ambition and the uncharted territory of her own potential. The audience's anticipation was palpable, their gazes woven with skepticism and interest, and in that moment, vulnerability flooded her thoughts. Would she crumble under their scrutiny, Or could she rise and seize the opportunity to claim her rightful place in the conversation surrounding agriculture? Taking a deep breath, she glanced at the familiar face watching from the back, the mentor who had guided her mother, a man whose validation she had long sought. His expression was one of quiet support, yet the weight of expectation pressed heavily on her shoulders. This was more than a presentation. It was an assertion of her identity and her mission. As she began to speak, words rolled off her tongue with surprising clarity. Today, I want to talk about the potential of forgotten agricultural techniques and the invaluable knowledge contained within the de Medici legacy. The words felt powerful, like seeds being planted in freshly turned soil, and slowly she realized that while her upbringing might seem like a hindrance to some, it also provided her with unique insights. Anchoring herself in her memories, she recounted her experiences in her father's fields, the way they had taught her resilience and creativity. It was these lessons that inspired her to seek solutions in botanical innovation. As she illustrated the ancient methods documented in her mother's letter, a tremor of confidence ignited within her. The skepticism she had faced began to shift. She could see eyes widening and whispers of intrigue unfurling amidst the sea of esteemed botanists. But just as the buzz of interest surged, uncertainty resurfaced. The imposing figure from the crowd made their way closer, an old colleague of her mother's who had been critical of her family's legacy. Amelia remembered the cuts of contempt that accompanied their previous encounters. Would they try to undermine her? Pushing through her anxiety, she leaned into the revelation she had made about the importance of communal knowledge and creativity. These methods were not just archive techniques. They represent a collaboration between generations, a bridging of old-world wisdom with modern demands. She felt the room lean in closer, captivated by her passion. This was her moment, a convergence of heritage and innovation, her small-town beginnings intertwining with the grandeur of history. When her presentation concluded, applause erupted, echoing warmly against the steely walls of the conference room. Amelia's heart swelled, not just from relief but also from the pride coursing through her veins. For the first time, she felt not like an imposter but an architect of change. Yet as she stepped away from the podium, the familiar figure approached her, articulate disdain etched into their features. A charming tale, but you know as well as I do that experience and pedigree carry weight in this field. How do you propose to validate these theories? The question hung in the air, challenging her like a gauntlet thrown at her feet. Her heart raced, suddenly uncertain, the weight of her ambitions threatening to suffocate her hope. But a pulse of determination surged within her as she recalled her father's urging voice, a reminder of what she had come to prove. I will collaborate, I will experiment, and I will not only advocate for these methods. I will present the results. The authority and conviction in her voice surprised even her. She was ready to enter the arena, to forge partnerships and present data that could shift paradigms. As she left the stage behind, invigorated but aware of the challenges ahead, Amelia felt the burden of legacy, but also the exhilarating freedom of potential. Yet, the distant voice of doubt whispered reminders of the elitism and distrust she would have to confront. What would it take to break through the barriers of skepticism? And how far would she need to go to protect her vision? That question lingered hauntingly, bittersweet yet urgent, propelling her forward into the unknown. With her heart still racing, she caught sight of an old newspaper clipping tucked between the pages of her mother's journal. Its headline promised something radical, a discovery that could intertwine her mother's life work with her own burgeoning vision. What new revelations awaited in that faded print? Amelia's fingers caressed the old newspaper clipping, her heart quickening as she deciphered the headline. Revealed. The incredible wedding night that transformed Catherine de Medici into a surprising agricultural pioneer. Drawing back, she realized it wasn't just a relic. It was an invitation into the uncharted depths of her family's legacy. This was the moment when curiosity blended with an urgent task. She needed to decode this faded story, to understand how it connected her past to her future. The challenge loomed larger than Amelia had anticipated. Realizing that her ambitions hinged not only on her innovative ideas but also on a concrete connection to her lineage, she felt the threads of her identity tightening around her. Each passing moment since stepping off the stage echoed with doubt, as if her determination might falter at any moment, lost to the howls of a skeptical audience. But this newfound discovery, a potential gem to freshen her intricately woven narrative, infused her with a fierce desire to probe deeper. She sought shade beneath a sprawling oak, feeling the need to both ground herself and stimulate her mind. The article noted that Catherine de Medici had been a revolutionary force in agronomy despite her royal status. There was a hint of rebellion in Amelia's thoughts. Catherine might have had the luxury of history and prestige, yet had defended her agricultural interests against the tide of aristocratic expectations. What if Amelia could harness this narrative, not merely as a footnote in history but as a rallying cry for a new generation of agriculture? Could she bring the timeless wisdom of her ancestors into modern practice? The answer felt closer than before, yet a single thread of unease lingered. What truths had her mother buried amidst the fabric of her own storytelling? Determined, Amelia began to sketch a plan. She would track down the sources behind the article, the scholars who had documented her family's impact on agriculture. There was urgency behind her every thought, the way she crafted her aspirations now tinged with the flavor of legacy. She needed results, tangible evidence that could sway even the most hardened critics in the field. However, the looming figures of her opponents back in the audience weighed heavily on her mind. Each meeting with the old colleague echoed a testament to their disdain for her unproven theories. Every skeptical stare burned in her memory. For now, those doubts simmered just below the surface. They were both a discomfort and a source of motivation. Could the unveiling of her family's legacy help to deflect those criticisms? If she were to rise, it would require the razor-sharp clarity born from knowing every side of her family's story. Amelia's thoughts evolved from anxiety to action. She reasoned that perhaps the newspaper clipping was less a clue and more of an arsenal. The knowledge woven into that article had the power to bridge generations and scientific evaluation. Perhaps she was in fact not merely following in her mother's footsteps but could design a new path entirely. Hours slipped away as she dove deeper into the world of archival research and interviews with historians and botanists who specialized in the de Medici legacy. Each hour spent unearthed fragments, intriguing notes, and unexpected connections. Yet there remained a danger in leaning too heavily on her lineage. Her commitment to originality was now being triangulated with the realities of navigating the academic elite, a tightrope she now must walk with grace. With each log entry cataloging her findings, a growing sense of purpose ignited within her. Yet, as the week progressed, the tangle of familial expectation and professional ambition began to test her. It was apparent that the delicate balance between her heritage and her mission could easily fray, especially with the imminent possibility of confrontation with her lingering detractor. What if they discovered her next steps before she had solidified her findings? The stakes felt raised and real, propelling Amelia to ask herself the most painful question yet. Could she remain true to her ambitions and honor her family without falling into the trap of the past? As doubts clawed at the edges of her thoughts, one realization pierced through. If she was to realize her vision, she would need to confront not just the external world but the internal conflict simmering just beneath the surface of her ambitions. Would she be ready for what lay ahead, or would her ancestors' shadows stifle her light? Amelia exhaled slowly, grounding her resolve as a new thought emerged. She would confront the past head-on and redefine what legacy meant in the waking world of groundbreaking agriculture. The battle was only beginning, and she could feel the defining moment of truth just around the corner. Amelia stood at the cusp of change, a delicate balance of reverence and ambition pulsating in her core. She was no longer just a researcher. She was a vessel of history, a conduit through which the past must flow to invigorate the present. Each detail she unearthed from her research became a stepping stone towards the transformation she desired to embody. As she organized her findings, the previously scattered notes emerged as a cohesive narrative. The more she read about Catherine de Medici's influence on agriculture, the more her own voice began to reflect confidence. But the faces of her doubters loomed in her memory, challenging her intentions. She had to establish her credibility, distinguish herself as an innovator rather than merely a legacy bearer. It was a critical moment that stretched Amelia's resolve. Where her ancestors had forged paths in agronomy, she aimed to blend their wisdom with innovative practices, using the historical significance to bolster modern techniques. The thought ignited a flame of defiance in her heart. She visualized the controversy she would stir, the debates she would ignite. Each revelation felt like a lifeline, and she penned strategies that bridged the old with the new, ensuring she wouldn't lose herself in the weight of expectation. A nagging thought escaped the depths of her consciousness. What if she accepted defeat? What if she didn't have all the answers, as surely her mother often implied? But as those thoughts slithered into her mind, she pushed them aside, choosing to focus on the possibility ahead. She would not falter. She would attack her anxieties with diligent preparation instead. With each conversation she initiated, each professor and expert she interviewed, Amelia began to amass a formidable network. This growing foundation buoyed her confidence. Navigating discussions slowly transformed from daunting experiences into collaborative exchanges filled with mutual respect and intellectual curiosity. She actively sought out differing opinions, using skepticism as a tool to sharpen her own arguments. However, her personal life began fraying at the edges. Friends she once invested time in withdrew, preferring familiarity over her relentless focus on legacy. In turn, she honed in on her mission, pouring every ounce of emotional energy into her research. In the quiet moments, doubts seeped in, whispering questions that gnawed at her heart. Was this pursuit worth the isolation? Were the sacrifices overshadowing potential success? Determined, Amelia acknowledged her path wouldn't grant her ease. Each encounter with an adversary in her field only steeled her resolve. She knew that every time she faced disapproval, it reaffirmed her deeper purpose. Each setback offered clarity, a morally charged reminder that the imbalance between her ambitions and her family's shadows was not just an internal battle, but an essential dialogue of growth. One evening, as she gazed at the sprawling night sky, a thunderstorm brewed within her, an exhilarating blend of fear and empowerment. Amelia realized that she had responsibilities not just to her legacy but to her own aspirations. It was time to transcend merely being an echo of the past. She had to explode into a new existence where her research could redefine agricultural practices. A sudden inspiration struck like lightning. What if she orchestrated a presentation that synthesized historical data with her contemporary insights? She envisioned a gathering of academic giants alongside like-minded innovators. Amelia delighted in the idea, a way to present her findings as a combination of revered tradition and progressive science. In that moment of clarity, the notion of public engagement morphed from daunting to exhilarating. However, a lingering fear crept in, one that felt comparable to the brevity of the storm clouds. What if she showcased her work prematurely? What if her past and present collided in a way that rendered her objectives nullified? With a palpable surge of determination, Amelia vowed to confront that fear. She would turn it into motivation, an obstacle to conquer on this journey of personal and professional reinvention. There was no turning back now. The time had finally come to face her detractors in a setting of her choosing, a space where legacy and innovation coexisted. With her heart racing, she prepared not only for a historical revelation but for a profound assertion of herself, ready to transform her doubts into an undeniable declaration of ambition. But the anticipated confrontation lingered on the horizon. Would the weight of her ancestry strengthen her resolve, or would it become a burden she could not shed? The gathering loomed closer, each passing day sharpening Amelia's senses, heightening her anticipation while simultaneously fraying her nerves. The room where her presentation would occur felt like a battleground, each wall whispering tales of the past, reminders of her heritage, and the expectations that encircled her like a vice. She knew she had to step boldly into the fray if she were to redefine her legacy. As she meticulously curated her slides, gathering old illustrations of agricultural practices alongside modern datasets, the task felt monumental yet exhilarating. This was no longer merely about sharing knowledge. It was an act of defiance against the nagging doubts she had battled for so long. Every image she selected, every statistic she included, served as a silent rebellion against the fear of inadequacy that had once threatened to paralyze her. At dawn, guilt washed over her during a series of calls with former friends. They were enticed by the hum of nostalgia, a life unburdened by the weight of expectations and responsibility. Amelia dreaded the conversations. Each one reinforced her isolation, yet also, in its own twisted way, rekindled her resolve. She could hear their laughter echoing in her mind, the memories vivid yet bittersweet. Their lives unfolded without her, carefree engagements in the backdrop of her arduous journey. But could she afford to return to that simplicity? Or had she already crossed the threshold into something more complex? She closed her eyes, taking a deep breath to focus, reminding herself of the goal that lay at the end of this tumultuous pathway, the culmination of her research that could potentially revolutionize agricultural science. In some hidden recess of her heart, she acknowledged this was never solely about her family's legacy. It was about crafting a narrative that enveloped both past and present. In her quiet moments, the ideas collided like thunderclouds, bringing forth a storm of creativity. What if she incorporated an interactive element into her presentation? A simulation that showcased the traditional applications of Catherine de Medici's agronomic insights alongside emerging methodologies? Suddenly, doubt morphed into an unwavering urge to engage her audience, not just to educate, but to inspire. As she finalized the last few visual aids, the ticking clock reminded her that soon the room would fill and eyes would scrutinize her every move. Overwhelmed, she paced through her cluttered apartment, rehearsing her speech aloud, baring her soul to the inanimate walls that had become her confidants. Would they resonate with her passion? Would her words inspire as much as she hoped they could? On the eve of the presentation, a nagging thought began to burrow within her mind. What if she had been deluding herself into thinking she belonged in a world crowded with seasoned professionals? Perhaps she had been chasing an unworthy goal. Seconds later, she silenced the skepticism, forcing a vivid vision of that gathering. Academic giants leaning in, captivated by her melding of tradition and modernity. She was not merely an echo. She was forging a new path. That night, amidst restless sleep, a powerful dream surged forth, the image of Catherine de Medici, commanding and confident, emerging from the shadows of doubt, equal parts past and future. When woke up, determination coursed through her veins. She could embody that resilience. She could command her space, armed with newfound conviction. And when the moment finally arrived, standing behind the podium, Amelia felt a rush reminiscent of climbing a summit, invigorating yet daunting. She knew there would be dissenters among the listeners, shadows of doubt that had followed her. But within her stood a voice, the voice of her ancestors, the pulse of every sleepless night spent unraveling history. Amelia embraced the challenge before her, ready to engage, inform, and most crucially, provoke thought. Little did she know, the storm she had weathered to reach this moment was just the first of many. For at that very instant, a critical question crackled in the air. What price might she have to pay if her groundbreaking ideas were dismissed? The room buzzed with anticipation as Amelia stepped up to the podium, the crowd's murmurs swelling in her ears like a distant ocean tide. Her heart thundered. Memories flooded back, not just of the countless hours spent poring over textbooks or the meticulous drafting of her slides, but of her childhood, where peeling tomatoes with her grandmother felt akin to divine revelation. That simple act transformed into a metaphor for her purpose. She was here to peel back the layers of knowledge, exposing the richness hidden beneath. As the spotlight snapped on, she felt both powerful and vulnerable, a striking juxtaposition that stirred something untamed within her. She took a deep breath, focusing her energy. The room fell silent, the weight of the moment wrapping around her like a shawl. She scanned the audience, making fleeting eye contact with familiar faces, the curiosity sparking in the eyes of potential allies countered by the skepticism from established giants. Each expression was palpable, whispering doubts about the merit of her research. Amelia launched into her presentation, weaving narratives of agronomy past and present. The stories rolled off her tongue with an ease that startled even her. She described the innovations of Catherine de Medici, her voice lilting with passion as she painted a vivid picture of agricultural practices that had withstood the test of time. The visuals supported her like a battalion, each slide dancing dynamically to underscore her points, her interactive element drawing the audience closer into the narrative she had crafted. Yet, with every spark of intrigue she ignited, shadows flickered at the periphery of her consciousness. A particular figure in the front row, a well-respected professor known for his penchant for critique, leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. The challenge in his gaze pierced through her composure, a specter of doubt that threatened to shatter the rhythm of her delivery. What if she is wrong? Echoed inside Amelia's mind, dangerously undermining her rising confidence. But as the seconds ticked by, she reminded herself that her worth was not determined by one man's opinion. This revelation surged with a fierce clarity that ricocheted through her, solidifying her purpose. With newfound vigor, she moved into the core of her presentation, presenting a bold comparison between historical methodologies and modern agricultural imperatives. The energy in the room shifted, a tangible tension as she posed questions for reflection, inviting the audience to reassess preconceived notions. She could sense it, the slow, creeping realization that her ideas bore the potential for evolution rather than mere nostalgia. Still, uncertainty clawed at her. Could she sustain their interest? Would they question her integrity or authenticity, seeking to dismantle her before she could plant the seeds of change? As the presentation drew to a close, she felt an undercurrent of hope swell within her. No questioning of worth could eclipse the dedication she had poured into this moment. Just as she prepared for the Q&A, a profound thought crystallized. Her ambition was not merely to inform but to cultivate a legacy of understanding. Then, as she opened the floor for questions, the critical professor raised his hand, and silence engulfed the room like a blanket, thick and oppressive. The moment was fraught with potential calamity, the breath between them electrifying and heavy. The time had come to face the direct confrontation she had subconsciously feared, and Amelia braced herself for whatever challenge awaited. Had she truly prepared to defend her newfound identity amidst the wolves waiting to pounce? The professor's voice sliced through the tension like a sharp knife, carrying the weight of his skepticism. What evidence do you have to support that these historical methodologies will actually yield tangible benefits today? The question hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown at her feet. Amelia felt her heartbeat pulse in her ears. She hadn't anticipated such direct confrontation, and for a moment, she was caught off guard, the spotlight suddenly feeling like a spotlight of judgment instead of power. I've outlined the theoretical framework, she recovered swiftly. It's technically sound and rooted in historical context. The practices improved yield in environment A, which correlates strongly to the conditions we face today. She could sense the crowd leaning in, the air thick with expectation. Correlation doesn't confirm causation. He pressed, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Each word was a challenge that peeled away at her confidence. Your assumptions are as flimsy as the slides you've presented. The crowd seemed to erupt into whispers, the tide of interest she had built beginning to ebb under the weight of doubt. She took a deep breath, steadying herself, looking for the threads of resilience she had woven throughout her life. What he didn't know about her was how the quiet moments peeling tomatoes with her grandmother had cultivated her patience and attention to detail, elements crucial to her development. Respectfully, she began, her voice clear and unwavering. The diligence behind my research stems from both historical data and current experimental practices. This isn't merely a presentation. It's a conversation about the evolution of agriculture in which you're invited to participate. The professor's posture shifted slightly, surprise flickering across his face before he regained his composure. But she could sense a change within him. She was emboldened as the initial gut-wrenching apprehension transformed into a focused determination. Each word she chose became a deliberate articulation of her viewpoint, much like the careful selection of ingredients her grandmother once made for their meals. But strategy without practicality is futile, he countered, his skepticism laced with a hint of respect that had not been there before. True, she acknowledged, but innovation arises precisely by reinventing what has been established. My research aims to bridge the old and the new, allowing us to harness the best of both worlds. With each sentence, Amelia crafted her narrative beyond just statistics and data points. She embedded it with purpose and vision, invoking her earlier storytelling method. The audience's expressions shifted, a subtle dance of intrigue and realization taking place. There was a rhythm to her words now, a melody that engaged without overshadowing her message. Then, she noticed the professor leaning forward slightly. His initial wariness appeared to yield to curiosity, and with that, Amelia felt her confidence amplify. Perhaps she had enough ammunition to keep him at bay. Moments later, other hands began to rise, questions flowing freely, some supportive, a few challenging. Amelia stared down the barrel of academic firepower launched her way, absorbing each bite with a sense of responsibility to stand her ground, to defend her vision, and to advocate for her passion. Yet amidst all the questions, she sensed herself fading into a conditioned response pattern. The passion that initially fueled her insights began morphing into rote responses, rehearsed and pragmatic rather than authentic. In that instant, she realized she was at a crossroads. Was she here merely to convince them, or did she truly believe in her purpose? The raw honesty of that realization struck her like a lightning bolt. Amelia needed to reclaim the authenticity that had fueled her journey thus far, and bear its weight unapologetically. In a flash of clarity, she spoke with conviction. This isn't just research. It is a call to action. Agriculture can thrive with insights from its past. A pulsating energy rippled through her, unexpected and exhilarating. As the enthusiasm of her reemergence poured from her, so did laughter, lively debates, and dialogues that filled the once still air. Amelia had ignited something powerful. Yet with every question and debate, she understood a lurking detail remained unaddressed. What if her vision was wider than she dared to imagine? To what extent could she influence their thinking and practices beyond the walls of this room? Just as her resolve solidified, a voice rang out from the far side of the audience. And if you're wrong, Amelia? A sudden chill coursed through her, not with fear but the thrilling sensation of the unknown. The confrontation hadn't ended. It had merely morphed. The stakes had risen. What if she truly was wrong? And what did it mean for her future, both in personal growth and professional ambition? The words hung, a heavy pendulum swinging over her, tugging at the edges of her composure. Amelia could feel the weight of the question pressing down on her like gravity, suffusing her thoughts with a sense of vulnerability. In an instant, the confidence she built wavered. What did it mean to advocate for a hypothesis that could falter under scrutiny? Everyone who stakes a claim in progress must be willing to entertain the possibility of being wrong. She responded, though this time her voice trembled slightly, revealing the cracks in her armor. The crowd's energy shifted, as if her vulnerability sparked a collective contemplation about the very nature of risk and intention in their pursuits. Exactly. But how prepared are you to accept that risk? The professor pressed on, his eyes glinting with newfound intensity. He wasn't merely trying to undermine her. He was inviting her into a deeper understanding of her own motivations. The ramifications of failure flared to life in her mind. Failure meant disappointment not just for her, but for those who believed in her vision, for the generations shaped by old practices. It was about her family and their struggles. But instead of retreating, something inside her stirred. She could choose to harness this moment and transform it into strength. I accept that risk, she declared, her heart quickening with each syllable. Each word was a step forward, a choice to be more than just another voice in the conversation. But my aim isn't to eliminate the chance of being wrong. It's to embrace it and learn from it. Without the willingness to explore new ideas, we risk stagnation. I refuse to ignore the voice of the past in shaping our future. The audience seemed to still, a silent acknowledgement of her resolve vibrating through the space. She could feel the energy shifting in her favor once more. As she spoke, Amelia replayed the personal stories, the late nights of research, the love and care her grandmother inflected upon every meal, wisdom steeped in time and trials now pulsing through her veins. Yet, a familiar shadow of doubt flickered within her. What if her arguments, passionate as they were, led others astray? Connecting historical insights to contemporary issues was a challenge. And who was she to assert such a vital link? In grappling with this uncertainty, Amelia realized that the very act of wrestling with her doubts solidified her heart's intent to move authentically forward. The commitment was personal. It became her compass. The questions continued, morphing as the atmosphere gradually shifted from adversarial to inquisitive, leading to a discourse that transcended her initial intent. Through various voices voicing their own uncertainties, Amelia discovered a common thread. Her audience sought connection and clarity, much like she did. The dialogue became a tapestry woven with shared fears and experiences, illuminating the complexities of agriculture that intertwined with their realities. But even amid dialogue and engagement, a nagging thought lingered in the back of her mind. Would she be able to transform enough minds to create real change? Would her character withstand the inevitable what-ifs that laced her path forward? As she gazed out into the sea of faces, Amelia recognized that they were not just spectators. They were potential allies in the endeavor she had begun. Fuel surged within her. It was larger than herself. It was about legacy, healing the land, and nurturing the community she longed to serve. With renewed vigor, she concluded, "This is our chance not merely to apply theory but to breathe life into age-old practices and transform our approach to agriculture. Are we willing to honor our past as we forge our future?" Applause erupted, an affirmation of her convictions, each clap echoing in her chest. But just as she began to relish the small triumph, she noticed the professor rising again. "And if the change you propose doesn't embrace every dimension of our complexities?" he asked. Amelia took a breath, aware that even victory bore its own burdens. The meaning of her aspiration expanded, integrating the weight of the moment. What must she confront next? A world where her insights were not universally embraced. The stage was set for her to reconcile brilliance with imperfections, challenging her pursuit of understanding as she ventured into uncharted territories of thought. Amelia stepped off the stage, her heart still racing from the adrenaline that surged through her veins. The applause had dimmed, but she could feel the weight of the professor's question like an anchor. He had opened a door to an unsettling reality, one where her ideas might not meet the sheer complexity of human experience. How could she advocate for change when the very foundation of her thoughts felt shaky? The din of the room faded as she walked away from the crowd. The stark fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, each hum amplifying her internal battle. She thought of her grandmother's worn hands gently molding dough, infusing each meal with a history rich in lessons. Yet, how could Amelia channel such profound wisdom into this complex modern world of agriculture, where not everyone shared her vision? In the next few weeks, Amelia found herself navigating through research papers and case studies, her laptop glowing in the dim light of her study. She pored over historical accounts of agricultural practices, drawn like moth to flame. There were ancient methods that spoke to resilience, yet there lingered the nagging notion that not all could be adapted to contemporary realities. The professor's question echoed relentlessly. Did she truly grasp the depth of the complexity she wished to address? As the days passed, her passion morphed into unease. Every data point became a question mark. What if her integration of the past into the present held too few answers for the realities of climate change? The voice of a farmer, grappling with increased drought, diverged sharply from her narrative of tradition. Was she preparing to speak for many, or merely for herself? One evening, sitting amid spreadsheets and scribbled notes, Amelia hit a wall. She felt the urge to shrink back from the challenge, to stay safe within concepts already familiar and manageable. The shadow of self-doubt whispered temptations of retreat, of quiet compliance. But the echoes of her past, the encouragement from family, the sacrifices made by those who had come before her nudged her closer to the light of clarity. She wasn't alone in this. There were voices to amplify her own. Motivated to confront her uncertainties, Amelia scheduled meetings with local farmers. Stepping into their world was daunting, but crucial. She needed perspective, the ground truth that numbers simply could not provide. Each conversation transformed her fear into determination. They opened their lives to her, sharing both struggles and triumphs. There was resilience woven deep into their narratives, an unpredictable network of adaptation, tradition, and innovation. Through these interactions, Amelia began to grasp the complexities swirling around her. She noted the farmers' accompanying fears and hopes for the future. They articulated their desires for sustainability, community support, and a deep connection to the land. This wasn't merely an academic pursuit. It was a tapestry of lives intertwined with the soil and seasons. However, even as these insights solidified her resolve, the specter of criticism loomed large, especially from voices in the academic world. She could imagine them, gathering in conference rooms, dissecting her proposals like hunters staging an inquisition. How would she defend a vision perceived as idealistic? The thought gripped her, beckoning her to reconsider her assertions. Could she bear the weight of their skepticism while still planting her claim on a foundation of shared experience? By the time she arrived back from her last meeting, Amelia felt a dichotomy of excitement and anxiety. She had accumulated knowledge and stories that fueled her belief in change, yet rage against her doubt still simmered inside her. How could she articulate these narratives with the intricacy they deserved, acknowledging the frailty of her ambitions yet striving for profound impact? Sitting at her desk, she penned the first draft of her manifesto, a fusion of her findings and the farmers' voices, but a pang of apprehension hit her once more. What if her voice rang hollow? What if the changes she proposed fell short of their expectations? As she wrestled with her emotions, a realization bloomed. Every mark on the page could also serve as a springboard into discussion and refinement. Shaping this into an actionable plan meant not just writing her thoughts but also inviting others into the conversation. Amelia leaned back in her chair, staring into space. She wouldn't shy away from complexity, nor would she dilute her vision. The journey ahead would demand honesty, vulnerability, and fierce commitment. A sudden burst of inspiration struck her. She dotted her last sentence and declared, "What we fear to embrace holds the power to transform our future." The metaphorical ink had dried, but a new challenge loomed: how to present this manifesto without falling prey to the very criticisms she sought to address. Deep breath. The time had come for her to face the haunting questions that lay ahead, the voices waiting to be invited, the critics ready to dissect, and the realities she needed to confront. Would she meet them head-on, or retreat into doubt once again? Amelia stood on the edge of her father's field, feeling the evening breeze dance over her, the crops swaying gently under the fading sun. The farm, which once felt like a suffocating burden, now resonated with the promise of new beginnings. She had returned from France, not only having presented her research but also having engaged in conversations that reshaped her understanding of both agriculture and herself. With the weight of expectations now lighter, Amelia felt empowered. She had embraced the voices of both her ancestors and her contemporaries. The past few months had become a crucible of transformation. The gathering where she had presented the legacy of Catherine de Medici had acted as a catalyst, igniting all that she had held within her. The critical echoes of doubts, the dismissive gestures of elite botanists, and her own hesitations had morphed into a symphony of motivation. Amelia had not only defended her ideas, she had shared them, allowing her audience to engage in an iterative dialogue that opened doors where barriers once existed. Through her research and discussions with local farmers, Amelia discovered the fusion between past techniques and modern innovations wasn't merely theoretical. It was a lifeline for communities. Her proposal, now a tangible plan supported by data and empathetic narratives, highlighted the significance of agricultural practices deeply entrenched in history. Where she had once felt like a mere echo of legacy, she now felt like a beacon, articulating a vision that harmonized tradition with innovation. The pivotal moment arrived when she was invited by the local agricultural board to lead a community workshop based on her findings. No longer would she merely be a voice critiqued from the sidelines. She would take charge, cultivating an environment ripe for collaboration. Standing before her peers, shareholding farmers, and enthusiastic young innovators, she felt the grounding connection to her roots firming around her like a vessel nurturing new growth. Together, we can revolutionize how we approach farming, she said, her voice steady but infused with enthusiasm. It's about learning from what worked, adapting it to our current realities, and creating sustainable solutions for our future. Applause erupted, not as a form of praise, but as a collective acknowledgement of their shared journey towards enlightenment. Her realization of her role as a facilitator, bringing farmers together and encouraging dialogue, was a turning point. Amelia recalled her mother's journal filled with dreams not just for herself but for generations to come. As she stepped into the role of leader, she realized that she was breathing new life into those dreams. In the months that followed, her workshop transformed into a series of seminars, bridging knowledge across the ages. Farmers willingly shared their experiences, challenges, and triumphs, breaking down the elitist cues that had once stifled innovation. What began as a flicker of uncertainty had burgeoned into a vibrant community of support. Invitations from agricultural institutions soon followed, and Amelia's research was not only recognized, it became a standard referenced in conversations across the region. Amelia found herself at a conference once more, but this time the atmosphere shifted from skepticism to inspiration. She spoke as an equal, having garnered respect in the field, validating her theories with robust data collected from her own community. "We must meet our past with conviction," she asserted, "but approach our future with readiness. The evolution of agriculture lies in our ability to adapt, innovate, and connect with those who cultivate the earth." As she concluded her presentation, she didn't wait. She ventured into the audience, looking to engage, to learn and listen. The challenge of confronting her critics had transformed from a fear into an invitation, one that recognized the urgency of shared growth. Walking away from the conference, Amelia felt solid confidence cradled within her. She had not only asserted her place within the agricultural community, she had also inspired a movement that echoed innovation rooted in tradition. The farm awaited her return, fruitful and flourishing under the newfound environment she had nurtured. Amelia smiled, understanding that she had not abandoned her dreams. She had transformed them, intertwining her legacy with the soil she cherished. In this journey of self-discovery, she had accomplished more than she ever envisioned. The whispers of doubt, the challenges of her upbringing, and lingering expectations had all dissipated into clarity, giving way to an identity she had crafted herself, a determined innovator, a voice of authenticity in the vast world of agriculture. Now was the moment for the audience. Don't let this journey end here. You need to subscribe to the channel immediately, so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire and transform. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support our community. Comment below your reactions and theories about Amelia's incredible journey and what it means for you. And finally, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. This is the moment to show your support and be part of this unfolding narrative. Don't wait even one more second.